They said she was worthless. A broken omega fit only to bandage wounds and keep her mouth shut. So when Alpha Rylan Voss stood before the pack and rejected her in front of everyone, ripping away her rank, her dignity, her future, Mara Whitlock should have crawled into the shadows and disappeared like they expected. But she didn't. Because that same night, she discovered something far worse than her own humiliation. Hidden in the Alpha's private orders was a death sentence. 19 orphaned wolf pups, deemed too weak and too costly to feed through winter, would be quietly eliminated before the first snow. So Mara made a choice that would change everything. She stole a van. She gathered the children, and she ran straight into the frozen wasteland toward the one place no wolf dared go, the territory of the Northern King. This is the story of the woman the pack threw away, the medic who became a queen, the guardian who pulled 19 lives out of hell with her bare hands. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with the city you're watching from, because this story, it's just getting started. The rejection ceremony took place on the coldest night of autumn. Mara stood in the center of the gathering circle, surrounded by 300 wolves whose eyes gleamed in the firelight. Her hands were steady, but her heart hammered against her ribs like a caged animal trying to break free. She had known this was coming. She had felt it in the way Rylan avoided her gaze for weeks, in the way his new lover, sleek, sharp-tongued Vivian, had smiled at her from across the hall. But knowing didn't make it hurt any less. Alpha Rylan Voss stepped forward, his broad shoulders cutting a silhouette against the bonfire. His voice, when he spoke, was cold and formal. "Mara Whitlock," he said, and the pack fell silent. "You have served this pack as a medic for 7 years. You have been my mate for 3. Mara's throat tightened. She forced herself to meet his eyes. "But you have failed to give me an heir," Rylan continued, his words precise and cutting. "You have failed to strengthen our bloodline, and you have failed to uphold the duties expected of an alpha's mate." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Mara's nails bit into her palms. "Therefore," Rylan said louder now, "I, Alpha Rylan Voss, formally reject you as my mate and strip you of your rank within this pack." The words hit her like a physical blow. Mara staggered, her wolf howling in anguish inside her chest. The bond between them, fragile as it had been, snapped like a dry twig, and the pain was blinding. She didn't cry. She wouldn't give them that. Instead, she lifted her chin and stared at Rylan until he looked away. "You are dismissed," he said quietly. Mara turned and walked out of the circle. The pack parted for her in silence, their faces a mix of pity and disdain. She kept her back straight, her steps measured. She didn't run. She didn't stumble. But when she reached the edge of the forest, she collapsed against a tree and let the tears come. 3 days later, Mara was still in her cabin, packing what little remained of her life. The cabin was small, just one room with a narrow bed, a wood stove, and a table cluttered with medical supplies. It wasn't much, but it had been hers. Now, it would belong to someone else. Someone useful. She folded a threadbare blanket and shoved it into a duffel bag, her movements mechanical. Her wolf was silent inside her, curled up in grief. She had barely eaten, barely slept. The rejection had left her hollow, like someone had scooped out her insides and left only the shell. A knock at the door made her freeze. "Mara?" It was Lena, one of the younger she-wolves. She worked in the kitchens and had always been kind to Mara, even when others weren't. Mara opened the door. Lena stood on the porch, her arms wrapped around herself against the wind. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with something that looked like fear. "What's wrong?" Mara asked immediately, her instincts kicking in. "I need to talk to you," Lena whispered. "But not here. Can you meet me at the old storage shed in an hour?" Mara frowned. "Lena, what's going on?" "Please," Lena said, her voice breaking. "Just come. You're the only one I can trust." Before Mara could respond, Lena turned and hurried away, disappearing into the trees. The storage shed sat at the far edge of the pack's territory, half hidden among the pines. It was rarely used anymore. Most of the supplies had been moved to the new warehouse near the main hall. Mara approached cautiously, her senses on high alert. Inside the shed was dark and cold. Lena was waiting for her, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. "Lena?" Mara said gently, stepping inside. "Talk to me." Lena spun around, tears streaming down her face. "They're going to kill them," she choked out. Mara's blood ran cold. Kill who? The orphans, Lena whispered. The pups in the group home. All 19 of them. For a moment, Mara couldn't breathe. What are you talking about? She demanded. Lena pulled a folded piece of paper from her jacket and handed it to Mara with shaking hands. Mara unfolded it, her eyes scanning the words. It was an order, signed by Rylan himself. By order of Alpha Rylan Voss, all orphaned pups currently housed in the group home are to be relocated to the northern border and released into neutral territory before the first snow. No exceptions. This action is necessary to preserve pack resources during the winter months. Mara read it again, then a third time. Released into neutral territory, she repeated slowly. That's not relocation, that's execution. Lena nodded, sobbing. They're going to leave them out there to die. Rylan said it's because we can't afford to feed them through the winter. He said they're dead weight. Mara's hands trembled as she stared at the paper. 19 children. The youngest was barely 4 years old. The oldest was 12. When? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Tomorrow night, Lena said. They're moving them after midnight, when everyone's asleep. Mara's mind raced. She thought of the children, small, frightened, abandoned. They had already lost their parents, and now their alpha was going to throw them away like garbage. Who else knows about this? Mara asked. Just the beta and a few of the enforcers, Lena said. Rylan kept it quiet. He doesn't want the pack to know. Mara folded the paper carefully and slipped it into her pocket. Thank you for telling me, she said. Lena grabbed her arm. Mara, what are you going to do? Mara met her eyes. I don't know yet, she said, but I'll figure it out. What? She spent the rest of the day planning. It was insane. It was impossible. But it was the only option she had. If she went to the pack council, they would dismiss her. She had no rank anymore, no voice. And even if they listened, Rylan controlled the council. They would side with him. If she tried to fight, she would lose. She was one wolf against 300. But if she took the children and ran, Mara stared at the map spread across her table. The northern border was 200 miles away. Beyond it lay the territory of King Kael Draven, the most feared alpha in the region. No one crossed into his land without permission. Those who tried didn't come back. But Kael was also known for one thing. He protected the weak. If she could get the children to his territory, he might take them in. He might give them sanctuary. It was a gamble, a desperate, reckless gamble, but it was the only chance they had. Mara waited until midnight. The pack was asleep, the fires banked low. She moved through the shadows like a ghost, her wolf guiding her steps. She had packed light, just a medical kit, a few blankets, and some food she'd stolen from the kitchen. The group home was a long, low building at the edge of the settlement. Mara slipped inside through the back door, her heart pounding. The children were asleep in rows of narrow beds. Mara moved quietly from bed to bed, gently shaking them awake. Don't scream, she whispered. It's me, Mara. I need you to trust me. The children stared at her with wide, frightened eyes. What's happening? One of the older boys whispered. We're leaving, Mara said. Right now. Grab your coats and your shoes. Don't make a sound. Where are we going? A little girl asked, clutching a stuffed rabbit. Mara knelt down and looked her in the eye. Somewhere safe, she promised. It took 20 minutes to get all 19 of them dressed and outside. They huddled together in the cold, shivering and confused. Mara led them to the old van she'd borrowed, stolen, really, from the mechanic's lot. It was a piece of junk, rusted and barely running, but it was all she had. Get in, she whispered, opening the back doors. The children climbed in, cramming themselves into the small space. Mara counted them twice to make sure she hadn't left anyone behind. 19, all accounted for. She closed the doors, climbed into the driver's seat, and turned the key. The engine sputtered, coughed, died. Mara's heart stopped. She turned the key again. Nothing. Come on, she hissed, slamming her hand against the dashboard. Come on, please. The engine roared to life. Mara didn't wait. She threw the van into gear and drove straight into the darkness, her headlights cutting through the night. Behind her, the pack slept on, unaware that 19 children had just disappeared into the wild. They made it 30 miles before the van died for good. It happened without warning. One moment, the engine was humming along. The next, it shuddered violently and went silent. Mara steered it to the side of the dirt road and slammed her fists against the wheel. No, no, no. She got out and popped the hood. Smoke billowed out, and the smell of burning oil filled the air. She didn't need to be a mechanic to know it was done. Behind her, the children climbed out of the van, their breath misting in the freezing air. "What happened?" one of them asked. Mara stared at the broken engine, then at the road ahead. They were in the middle of nowhere, no shelter, no help, and winter was closing in fast. She turned to the children. "We're going to walk," she said. "Walk?" one of the older girls repeated. "To where?" "North," Mara said, "to the border." "That's over 100 miles, the girl said, her voice rising. "We'll never make it." Mara knelt down and put her hands on the girl's shoulders. "Yes, we will," she said firmly, "because the alternative is death. Do you understand me?" The girl's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. Mara stood and looked at the group. "We stick together," she said. "We keep moving, and we don't stop until we reach safety." She pulled the rope out of the van, tied it around her waist, and fashioned a makeshift harness. Then she began loading the children onto the sled she'd built from scrap wood and metal. It wasn't much, but it would have to be enough. The first night was the hardest. They walked until their legs gave out, then huddled together under a cluster of trees. Mara gave the children what little food she had and wrapped them in blankets. She didn't sleep. She couldn't. Every sound in the forest made her jump, every snap of a branch, every rustle of leaves. The second day was worse. The temperature dropped and snow began to fall. The children moved slower, their small bodies struggling against the cold. Mara pulled the sled with everything she had, the rope cutting into her skin. Her muscles screamed, her lungs burned, but she didn't stop. By the third day, they were being hunted. Mara heard the howls first, distant but unmistakable. Rylan had sent enforcers after them. She pushed the children harder, her wolf snarling inside her. "We're almost there," she lied, her voice hoarse. "Just a little farther." But the truth was, she didn't know if they would make it. All she knew was that she couldn't stop. Not now. Not ever. On the fifth day, Mara collapsed. Her body simply gave out. She fell face first into the snow, the rope still tied around her waist. The children screamed and rushed to her side, shaking her, crying her name. Mara's vision blurred. She could hear the howls getting closer. "Run," she whispered. "Leave me, run." "No," one of the boys shouted. "We're not leaving you." Mara tried to push herself up, but her arms buckled, and then, through the haze of pain and exhaustion, she saw them. 5 wolves emerged from the trees, their eyes glowing in the dim light. They were massive, bigger than any wolf she'd ever seen. And at the front of the pack stood a man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and eyes like steel. He wore a heavy cloak lined with fur, and there was a crown of silver and bone resting on his head. King Kyle Draven, the Northern King. Mara's heart pounded as he approached, his boots crunching in the snow. He stopped a few feet away and stared down at her, his expression unreadable. "You crossed into my territory," he said, his voice low and dangerous. Mara struggled to lift her head. "I had no choice," she gasped. Kale's eyes flicked to the children, then back to her. "Who are you?" he demanded. "Mara Whitlock," she whispered. "And these children, they were going to be killed. I couldn't let that happen." Kale's jaw tightened. "By whose order?" "My alpha," Mara said, her voice breaking. "Rylan Voss." For a long moment, Kyle said nothing. Then he crouched down beside her, his gaze sharp and intense. "You dragged 19 children across 100 miles of frozen wasteland," he said slowly. "Alone." Mara nodded weakly. Kyle stared at her for another beat. Then he stood and turned to his wolves. "Bring them to the fortress," he ordered. "All of them." Mara's vision began to fade, but she felt strong arms lift her from the snow. And for the first time in days, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, they were going to survive. Mara woke to warmth. It was the first thing she noticed, the absence of cold, the soft weight of blankets, the crackle of fire somewhere nearby. For a moment she thought she was dreaming, But when she opened her eyes, she found herself in a large stone room with high ceilings and tapestries hanging on the walls. She wasn't dead. She sat up too quickly, and pain shot through her body. Her muscles screamed in protest, her ribs ached, and her hands were wrapped in clean white bandages. She looked down at herself. Someone had changed her clothes. She was wearing a soft linen shirt and wool pants, both too large for her. "Easy," a voice said from the doorway. Mara's head snapped up. A woman stood there, older, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a braid. She wore a healer's apron and carried a tray with a steaming bowl. "You've been asleep for 2 days," the woman said, setting the tray on the table beside the bed. "Your body was in shock. Hypothermia, severe dehydration, malnutrition, and about a dozen other things that should have killed you." Mara's throat was dry. "The children, they're safe," the woman said quickly. "All 19 of them, fed, warm, and sleeping in the children's wing." Relief flooded through Mara so powerfully that tears sprang to her eyes. She pressed her hands to her face, her shoulders shaking. The woman sat down on the edge of the bed and waited. When Mara finally looked up, her voice was hoarse. "Where am I?" "King Kyle's fortress," the woman said. "You're in the Northern Territory now. My name is Alara. I'm the head healer here." Mara nodded slowly, trying to process it all. "I need to see them, the children. I need to see—" "You need to eat," Alara interrupted firmly, pushing the bowl toward her. "And rest. The children are fine. You, on the other hand, are not." Mara wanted to argue, but her body betrayed her. She picked up the spoon and took a sip of the broth. It was rich and warm, and it tasted like heaven. Alara watched her for a moment, then spoke again, her voice softer. "What you did was remarkable, dragging 19 children across the wasteland in the dead of winter, alone. Most wolves wouldn't have made it 10 miles. Mara swallowed. "I didn't have a choice." "There's always a choice," Alara said. "You could have left them. Most would have." Mara set the bowl down, her hands trembling. "Their alpha ordered them killed. He was going to leave them in the woods to freeze to death. I couldn't—" Her voice broke. "I couldn't let that happen." Alara's expression darkened. "Rylan Voss." Mara looked up sharply. "You know him?" "Everyone in the North knows him," Alara said, her tone bitter. "He's a coward and a fool, and now he's a murderer too." Before Mara could respond, the door opened again. King Kyle stepped inside. He was even more imposing up close, taller than she remembered, with a presence that filled the room. His dark eyes settled on her, and for a moment Mara forgot how to breathe. "You're awake," he said. His voice was deep, steady, and carried the weight of authority. Mara nodded, unable to speak. Kale turned to Alara. "Give us a moment." Alara stood and left without a word, closing the door behind her. Kyle remained standing, his arms crossed over his chest. He studied Mara for a long moment, and she forced herself to meet his gaze. "You brought children into my territory without permission," he said finally. "I know," Mara said quietly. "You could have been killed at the border. My guards don't take kindly to trespassers." "I know. And yet you came anyway." Mara lifted her chin. "Because the alternative was watching them die." Kyle's jaw tightened. He took a step closer and Mara's wolf stirred inside her, wary but not afraid. "Tell me everything," he said. "From the beginning." So she did. She told him about the rejection ceremony, about Lena's warning and the order she'd found, about stealing the van and the trek through the wilderness. She told him about the nights huddled under trees, the enforcers hunting them, and the moment her body had finally given out. Kyle listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When she finished, the room was silent. "You're either the bravest wolf I've ever met," Kyle said slowly, "or the most foolish." Mara's hands clenched in her lap. "Maybe both." Kale's lips twitched, just slightly, like he was fighting a smile, but it was gone in an instant. "The children will stay here," he said, "under my protection. But there's a complication." Mara's stomach dropped. "What complication?" Kale moved to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. "One of the children carries royal blood, northern blood." Mara blinked. "What?" "The youngest girl," Kale said. "She has the scent of the Draven line, which means she's likely the daughter of my cousin, who disappeared 6 years ago during a raid on the southern border. Mara's mind raced. You think Rylan knew? I don't know, Kyle said. But if he did, and he tried to have her killed anyway, it's an act of war. Mara's breath caught. What are you going to do? Kale turned back to her, his eyes hard. That depends on you. On me? Rylan will come for the children, Kyle said. He'll claim you kidnapped them. He'll demand their return. And when I refuse, he'll try to take them by force. Mara's wolf snarled inside her. Let him try. Kael's gaze sharpened. You're still recovering. You're not strong enough to fight. I don't care, Mara said, her voice fierce. I didn't drag them across the wasteland just to hand them over to a man who wanted them dead. Kael studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Good, he said, because you're going to help me keep them safe. The next 3 days passed in a blur. Mara spent most of her time with the children, reassuring them, checking on their injuries, and making sure they were adjusting to their new surroundings. The northern fortress was nothing like the pack settlement they'd come from. It was massive, carved into the side of a mountain, with thick stone walls and fires that burned day and night. The wolves here were different too, bigger, stronger, and fiercely loyal to their king. The children were wary at first, but they warmed up quickly, especially to Kael. Mara watched from the doorway one afternoon as he sat with them in the great hall, listening to their stories and answering their questions. He was patient with them, gentle, even, in a way that surprised her. This was the man the South feared as a tyrant. But here, surrounded by orphaned pups, he looked almost kind. He's good with them, Alara said, appearing at Mara's side. Mara nodded. I didn't expect that. Most people don't, Alara said. They hear the stories and think he's a monster, but he's not. He's just protective, especially of the weak. Mara glanced at her. Why? Alara hesitated, then sighed. He lost his younger brother when he was 17. The boy was killed during a raid, murdered by southern wolves who thought it would weaken Kael's claim to the throne. It didn't, but it changed him. Mara's chest tightened. She looked back at Kael, who was now showing one of the younger boys how to carve a piece of wood. He won't let anyone hurt them, Alara said quietly. Not while he's alive. Mara felt something shift inside her chest. A strange warmth she didn't quite understand. One of the children, a girl named Sophie with bright green eyes, ran over to Mara and tugged on her sleeve. Miss Mara, she said breathlessly. King Kael said we can stay forever. Is that true? Mara knelt down and brushed the hair from Sophie's face. Yes, sweetheart. You're safe here. Sophie threw her arms around Mara's neck and squeezed tight. Thank you for saving us. Mara's throat closed up. She held the little girl close and blinked back tears. You don't have to thank me, she whispered. But Sophie was already running back to the other children, laughing and shouting. Alara smiled. They adore you, you know. Mara stood up, wiping her eyes. I just did what anyone would have done. No, Alara said firmly. You did what no one else was brave enough to do. On the fourth day, the alarm bells rang. Mara was in the children's wing, reading to a group of younger pups, when the sound echoed through the fortress. She froze, her wolf immediately on alert. The children looked up at her with wide, frightened eyes. Stay here, Mara said, keeping her voice calm. Don't leave this room until I come back. She ran toward the main hall, her heart pounding. Kael was already there, standing at the center of the room with his beta, a tall, scarred wolf named Garrett, and several guards. His expression was cold, his posture rigid. How many? Kael asked. 20, Garrett said, led by Rylan Voss himself. Mara's blood ran cold. Kael's eyes flicked to her. Stay out of sight. No, Mara said, stepping forward. If he's here for the children, I'm not hiding. Kael's jaw tightened. Mara, I said no. For a moment they stared at each other. Then Kael nodded once, sharp and reluctant. Fine, he said, but you stay behind me. They moved toward the gates together, Kael's guards flanking them on all sides. Mara's heart was racing, but she kept her expression calm. She wouldn't give Rylan the satisfaction of seeing her afraid. The gates opened, and there he was. Rylan stood at the head of his enforcers, his posture arrogant, his eyes cold. He looked the same as he had the night of the rejection, handsome, polished, and utterly ruthless. But now, Mara saw him for what he truly was, a coward dressed in Alpha's clothing. When he saw Mara, his expression twisted into something between rage and disgust. "Mara," he said, his voice dripping with venom. "I should have known you'd run straight to him." Mara stepped forward, ignoring the way Kale's hand twitched like he wanted to pull her back. "I didn't run to anyone," she said evenly. "I ran from you." Ryland's lip curled. "You stole pack property. 19 children who belong to me." "They're not property," Mara snapped. "They're children, and you were going to kill them." "That's a lie," Ryland said sharply. "Is it?" Mara pulled the folded order from her pocket and held it up. "Because I have your signature right here." Ryland's face darkened. "That document is classified. Where did you get it?" "Does it matter?" Mara said. "You ordered their deaths. You called them dead weight, and when I found out, I took them somewhere safe." "You had no right," Ryland snarled. "You're nothing, a rejected Omega with no rank and no authority. You stole from me, and I'm here to take back what's mine." Kale stepped forward, and the temperature seemed to drop. "They're not yours," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Not anymore." Ryland's eyes flicked to him. "This is pack business, Draven. It doesn't concern you. You're standing on my land," Kale said. "That makes it my business." Ryland's jaw tightened. "The children belong to my pack. I demand their return." "Demand all you want," Kale said. "The answer is no." Ryland's hands clenched into fists. "You're protecting a thief and a liar." "I'm protecting children," Kale said, "from a man who tried to have them murdered." "That's a serious accusation," Ryland said, his voice tight. "And I have proof," Kale said, nodding toward Mara. Ryland's eyes blazed. "She's lying. She's manipulating you." "Enough," Kale said, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. "You have no claim here. The children stay. And if you set foot on my land again without permission, I will consider it an act of war." Ryland stared at him, his face twisting with fury. Then he turned to Mara, and his expression shifted into something colder, something calculated. "You think you've won," he said softly, "but you haven't. I'll take this to the council. I'll prove you're a kidnapper and a traitor, and when I do, even he won't be able to protect you." Mara's wolf snarled, but she kept her voice steady. "Do your worst." Ryland smiled, a thin, cruel smile, and turned back to his enforcers. "Let's go," he said. They left without another word, disappearing into the trees. Mara's legs felt weak, but she forced herself to stay upright until they were out of sight. When she finally turned around, Kael was watching her. "You shouldn't have provoked him," he said quietly. "I know," Mara said, "but I'm not afraid of him anymore." Kael's eyes softened, just slightly. "You should be," he said, "because he's not going to let this go." Sham. That night, Mara couldn't sleep. She sat by the window in her room, staring out at the snow-covered mountains. Her mind was racing, replaying Ryland's words over and over again. He was going to take this to the council. He was going to accuse her of kidnapping, and if he succeeded, she would lose everything, including the children. A knock at the door startled her. "Come in," she said. Kael stepped inside, closing the door behind him. He was still wearing his heavy cloak, and his hair was dusted with snow. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. Mara shook her head. Kael crossed the room and stood beside her, looking out at the mountains. "He's going to the council," Mara said quietly, "and they'll believe him. He's an alpha. I'm nothing." "You're not nothing," Kael said firmly. Mara looked at him. "Then what am I?" Kael turned to face her, his expression serious. "You're the woman who saved 19 lives," he said. "You're the wolf who crossed 100 miles of frozen hell because you couldn't stand by and let children die. You're brave, stubborn, and reckless. But you're not nothing." Mara's throat tightened. "I have an idea," Kael said slowly. "But you're not going to like it." "What kind of idea?" Kael hesitated, then met her eyes. "We appear before the council together," he said, "as a bonded pair." Mara's heart stopped. "What?" "If we present ourselves as mates," Kael said, "it changes everything. You're no longer a rogue wolf who stole pack property. You're my queen, and the children are under my protection as part of our family. Mara stared at him, her mind reeling. You want to fake a bond? Not fake, Kyle said. A political alliance. It would be real enough to satisfy the council. But, Mara shook her head. Why would you do that? You don't even know me. Kale's gaze didn't waver. Because you risked everything to save those children. And because if I don't, Rylan will take them back and finish what he started. Mara's hands trembled. She looked down at them, her mind racing. It was insane. It was reckless, but it might be the only way. She looked back at Kyle. If we do this, she said slowly, and he finds out it's not real. He won't, Kyle said. Not if we're careful. Mara took a deep breath. Then she nodded. Okay, she said. Let's do it. Kyle's expression softened, just for a moment. Then he extended his hand. Partners? He said. Mara took his hand. Partners. The council hearing was set for 3 days later. Mara spent those days preparing, learning everything she could about the northern customs and the laws that governed pack disputes. Kyle coached her, walking her through what to expect, how to answer questions, and how to present herself as his mate. It felt surreal, like she was playing a role in a story that didn't belong to her. But every time she looked at the children, safe, warm, and smiling, she reminded herself why she was doing this. Garrett, Kale's beta, was less enthusiastic about the plan. This is dangerous, he said one evening as they sat in Kale's study. If the council discovers the bond isn't real, they'll strip you of your authority, and they'll take the children. They won't discover it, Kale said calmly. How can you be sure? Garrett demanded. Because we'll make it convincing, Kyle said. He glanced at Mara. Won't we? Mara nodded, though her stomach was churning. Garrett shook his head. You're risking everything for a woman you barely know. I'm risking everything for 19 children who deserve better, Kyle said sharply. And for the principle that no alpha has the right to order executions to save resources. Garrett was silent for a moment. Then he sighed. Fine, he said, but don't say I didn't warn you. On the morning of the hearing, Elara helped Mara dress. She wore a gown of deep blue, embroidered with silver thread, and a cloak lined with fur. Her hair was braided back, and around her neck hung a pendant bearing Kyle's crest. She looked like a queen. She didn't feel like one. You'll be fine, Elara said, adjusting the cloak. Just remember, you belong there. You earned this. Mara met her eyes in the mirror. I'm terrified. Good, Elara said with a small smile. That means you're smart. Kyle was waiting for her in the great hall, dressed in black with his crown resting on his head. When he saw her, something flickered in his eyes, something that looked almost like admiration. You ready? He asked. Mara nodded, even though her heart was pounding. Let's go, she said. They traveled to the council hall together, surrounded by Kyle's guards. The building was massive, carved from white stone and filled with wolves from every pack in the region. Rylan was already there, standing with his enforcers. When he saw Mara and Kyle enter together, his face twisted with rage. The head counselor, a grizzled old wolf named Theron, called the assembly to order. We are here to settle a dispute, Theron said. Alpha Rylan Voss accuses Mara Whitlock of kidnapping 19 children from his pack. King Kale Draven has offered the children sanctuary. Both parties will present their cases. Rylan stepped forward. Mara Whitlock is a rogue, he said. She was rejected from my pack and stripped of her rank. 3 days later, she stole 19 children in the middle of the night and fled to the north. She is a criminal and a traitor, and I demand the children be returned immediately. The council murmured. Theron turned to Mara. What is your response? Mara stepped forward, her voice steady. I didn't kidnap anyone, she said. I saved them. She pulled the order from her cloak and held it up. This is a signed order from Alpha Rylan Voss, she said. It states that all 19 children were to be relocated to neutral territory before the first snow. But relocation was a lie. He was planning to leave them in the woods to die. Gasps rippled through the hall. Rylan's face went pale. That document is forged. It's not, Mara said, and I have a witness. Lena Kaur, a member of Rylan's pack, will testify that she saw the order herself. Lena stepped forward from the crowd, her hands shaking but her voice clear. "It's true?" she said. "I saw the order, and I heard the beta talking about it. They were going to kill the children because they couldn't afford to feed them through winter." The council erupted in outrage. Ryland's face turned red. "This is absurd!" "Enough," Theron said sharply. He turned to Kael. "And you, King Draven, what is your claim in this matter?" Kael stepped forward, his hand resting on Mara's shoulder. "Mara Whitlock is my mate," he said, "and the children are now part of my family. I will not return them to a man who tried to have them murdered." The hall fell silent. Ryland stared at them, his eyes blazing. "You expect us to believe that?" he said, his voice shaking with rage. "You just happened to bond with a rogue Omega days after she appeared on your doorstep?" Kael's gaze was cold. "Believe what you want. It doesn't change the facts." Ryland took a step forward, his control slipping. "This is a lie," he snarled, "a convenient fiction to cover up her crimes. She's manipulating you. Or maybe," Mara said quietly, "you're just angry that I chose him over you." The words hung in the air like a gunshot. Ryland's face twisted with fury, and for a moment Mara thought he might attack her right there in the hall. But then he smiled, a slow, vicious smile. "You think you've won," he said softly, "but you haven't, because I know the truth, and so does everyone else." He turned to the council. "She's lying," he said, "about the bond, about everything, and I can prove it." Mara's blood ran cold. Ryland stepped closer, his eyes locked on hers. "If you're really his mate," he said, "then you should have no problem proving it." Theron frowned. "What are you suggesting?" Ryland's smile widened. "A blood test," he said, "to confirm the bond." Mara's heart stopped, because she knew and Ryland knew that the test would reveal the truth. There was no bond, and if the council found out, they would take the children away. Kael's hand tightened on her shoulder, and she could feel the tension radiating from him. Theron looked between them. "Alpha Voss makes a reasonable request. If there is a true mate bond, the blood test will confirm it. Do you consent?" Mara opened her mouth, but no words came out. Ryland's smile was triumphant. "Unless, of course, you have something to hide." Kael stepped forward, his voice ringing through the hall. "We consent," he said. Mara's eyes went wide. She turned to look at him, but his expression was unreadable. What was he doing? Ryland looked surprised for just a moment, then his smile returned. "Excellent. Then let's settle this once and for all." The council healer, an ancient she-wolf named Maris, approached with a silver bowl and a small blade. She looked at Kael and Mara with eyes that seemed to see right through them. "Give me your hands," she said. Mara's hands were shaking as she extended them. Kael did the same, his face calm. Maris made a small cut on each of their palms, then let their blood drip into the bowl. The hall was silent as she mixed the blood together, whispering words in the old language. The mixture began to glow, faintly at first, then brighter. Mara held her breath. Then Maris looked up, her expression surprised. "There is a bond," she said slowly, "newly formed, but present." Mara's heart nearly stopped. How was that possible? Ryland's face went white. "That's impossible. She was rejected." "The test doesn't lie," Maris said firmly. "These two share a mate bond." The council erupted in conversation. Theron raised his hand for silence. "Then the matter is settled. Mara Whitlock is King Draven's mate, and the children are under his protection. Alpha Voss, your claim is denied." Ryland stood frozen, his face a mask of rage and disbelief. "This isn't over," he said, his voice low and dangerous. Then he turned and stormed out of the hall, his enforcers scrambling to follow. Mara stood there, stunned, as the council dissolved around them. She turned to Kael. "How?" she started. But Kael just squeezed her hand and leaned in close. "Later," he whispered. "Not here." They left the council hall together, Mara's mind spinning. A bond. They had a bond. But how? She hadn't felt anything. No connection, no pull, nothing. Had she? Back at the fortress, Kael led her to his private chambers and closed the door. "What just happened?" Mara demanded. Kael ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know." "You don't know?" Mara's voice rose. The blood test showed a bond, Kyle. How is that possible? I don't know, he repeated. He looked as shaken as she felt. Unless what? Kale met her eyes. Unless it formed on its own, without us realizing it. Mara's breath caught. That's not possible, isn't it? Kyle said. We've been spending every day together, training, planning, taking care of the children. What if... He stopped, shaking his head. What if the bond formed naturally? Mara sank into a chair, her mind reeling. A real bond. With Kyle. She didn't know whether to be terrified or relieved. What do we do now? She asked quietly. Kale was silent for a long moment. Then he knelt down in front of her, taking her hands in his. We protect those children, he said, whatever it takes. Together. Mara looked into his eyes and saw nothing but sincerity. She nodded. Together. But together meant something different now. The bond changed everything. Mara felt it the moment they returned to the fortress. A strange pull in her chest, a heightened awareness of Kyle's presence. When he was near, her wolf hummed contentedly. When he left the room, she felt the absence like a physical ache. It terrified her. She had never wanted this. A real bond, a connection she couldn't control or walk away from. And yet, here it was, thrumming beneath her skin like a second heartbeat. Kale seemed equally unsettled. He was quieter than usual, his movements careful, like he was trying not to spook her. They didn't talk about it. They focused on the children, on fortifying the fortress, on preparing for whatever Rylan would do next, but the bond was always there, humming between them. 3 days after the council hearing, Garrett burst into the war room where Kyle and Mara were reviewing guard rotations. We have a problem, he said, his face grim. Kale looked up sharply. What kind of problem? Scouts just returned from the southern border, Garrett said. Rylan's gathered an army, 200 wolves, maybe more. They're camped 15 miles south of our territory. Mara's blood ran cold. He's going to attack, she said. Not yet, Garrett said. He's waiting for something. Reinforcements, maybe. Or orders from the Southern Council. Kale's jaw tightened. How long do we have? A week, Garrett said. Maybe less. Kale stood, his hands braced on the table. Double the guard rotations. Send word to every outpost. I want eyes on that camp at all times. Already done, Garrett said. Kale nodded. Good. Anything else? Garrett hesitated, then glanced at Mara. There's something else. One of the scouts overheard Rylan talking to his commanders. He's not just coming for the children. Mara's stomach dropped. What does he want? Garrett's eyes were dark. You. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. He wants to drag you back in chains, Garrett continued. Public execution. He's calling it justice for kidnapping and treason. Mara felt the room tilt. She gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. Kale's voice was deadly calm. He's not getting anywhere near her. He doesn't need to, Garrett said. If he surrounds the fortress and demands you hand her over, we'll be facing a siege. We can hold out for a while, but eventually... No, Kyle said flatly. We don't negotiate with him. We don't hand over anyone. We fight. Garrett looked like he wanted to argue, but he nodded. I'll prepare the warriors. When he left, Mara sank into a chair, her hands shaking. This is my fault, she whispered. Kale crossed to her in 2 strides and knelt down, taking her hands in his. This is Rylan's fault, he said firmly. He's the one who ordered children killed. He's the one who came here demanding blood. None of this is on you. But if I hadn't taken them, those children would be dead, Kyle said. And you would have lived the rest of your life knowing you could have saved them, but didn't. Is that what you want? Mara's throat tightened. No. Then stop blaming yourself, Kyle said. We're going to get through this. Mara looked into his eyes and wanted desperately to believe him, but doubt gnawed at her insides like a living thing. That night, she couldn't sleep. She paced her room, her mind spinning with worst-case scenarios. If Rylan attacked, people would die. Kale's warriors. Maybe even the children. And all because of her. She couldn't let that happen. Around midnight, she made a decision. She would leave. Slip out before dawn, travel south, and turn herself into Rylan. If he had her, he would call off the attack. The children would be safe. Kael's pack would be safe. It was the only way. She dressed quickly, pulling on thick leggings and a heavy coat. She packed a small bag with food and water, then moved toward the door. A voice stopped her. Going somewhere? Mara spun around. Kael stood in the doorway, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. How did you— I felt it, Kael said, tapping his chest. The bond. You were planning to leave. Mara's hands clenched. I have to. If I turn myself in, he'll kill you, Kael said flatly. You know that. Maybe, Mara said, but at least the children will be safe. Kael stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. Do you really think Rylan will stop with you? He wants the children back. He wants to prove I can't protect what's mine. If you go to him, you're just giving him exactly what he wants. Then what do you suggest? Mara demanded. We can't fight an army of 200 wolves. We'll lose. We have 150 warriors, Kael said. Well-trained, loyal, and defending their own land. We have the advantage. That's not enough, Mara said, her voice breaking. People are going to die, Kael. Your people. Because of me. Kael crossed the room and cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. Listen to me, he said, his voice fierce. I would rather lose 100 warriors defending what's right than hand you over to a man who wants to execute you for saving children. Do you understand me? Mara's eyes filled with tears. I don't want anyone to die for me. Then don't die for them, Kael said. Stay. Fight. Help me protect what we've built here. Mara stared at him, her heart pounding. Then she nodded. Okay, she whispered. I'll stay. Kael pulled her into his arms, and Mara let herself lean into him, just for a moment. The bond thrummed between them, warm and steady. We're going to win this, Kael said into her hair. I promise you. Mara wanted to believe him, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was coming. The attack came 5 days later in the middle of the night. Mara woke to the sound of alarm bells and shouting. She bolted upright, her wolf snarling to life inside her. Kael was already gone. She dressed in seconds and ran toward the children's wing. The hallways were chaos, warriors rushing toward the walls, healers preparing the infirmary, servants herding the youngest children to the shelters deep inside the mountain. Mara found Alara in the children's wing, organizing the evacuation. What's happening? Mara demanded. Ryland's forces breached the outer defenses, Alara said, her face pale. They're pushing toward the main gates. Mara's heart stopped. The children. They're being moved to the underground chambers, Alara said. But we need more time. I'll buy you time, Mara said. Mara, no. But Mara was already running. She reached the walls just as the first wave of attackers hit the gates. The sound was deafening. Metal on metal, snarls and screams, the crackle of fire. Kael stood at the center of the defense, his sword flashing in the torchlight. He was magnificent and terrifying, cutting through enemies like they were made of paper. Mara shifted into her wolf form and launched herself into the fray. She was smaller than most of the warriors, but she was fast. She dodged and struck, her teeth finding throats and tendons. She fought like something wild and desperate, driven by the need to protect the children sleeping beneath the mountain. The battle raged for hours. Mara lost track of time. Everything became blood and fire and the endless press of enemies. She was bleeding from a dozen wounds, her muscles screaming, but she didn't stop. And then she saw him, Rylan. He stood at the edge of the battlefield, directing his forces. His eyes scanned the chaos until they found her. He smiled. Mara's blood turned to ice. Rylan shifted into his wolf form, a massive black beast with yellow eyes, and charged straight at her. Mara barely had time to brace herself before he slammed into her, knocking her to the ground. His jaws snapped inches from her throat. She twisted and kicked, throwing him off. They circled each other, snarling. You should have stayed where you belonged, Rylan's voice echoed in her mind through the bond they'd once shared. The connection was severed, but the memory lingered. Weak, obedient, mine. Mara bared her teeth. I was never yours. Rylan lunged. They collided in a tangle of fur and teeth. Rylan was bigger, stronger, but Mara was faster. She ducked under his jaws and raked her claws across his shoulder. He howled and backhanded her with a massive paw. Mara hit the ground hard. her vision swimming. Rylan loomed over her, his jaws opening. And then Kyle was there. He slammed into Rylan with the force of an avalanche, sending the other alpha sprawling. The two males circled each other, hackles raised, eyes blazing. "She's mine," Kale growled. "She's a traitor," Rylan snarled back. "She's a hero," Kale said. "And you're a coward who orders children killed to save coin." Rylan's eyes flashed. "I did what was necessary." "You did what was easy," Kyle said, "and now you're going to pay for it." They launched at each other. The fight was brutal. Kale was larger and more experienced, but Rylan fought with the desperation of a man with nothing left to lose. They tore into each other, blood staining the snow. Mara struggled to her feet, her body screaming in protest. She had to help, but before she could move, someone grabbed her from behind. "Vivian!" Rylan's lover had shifted into her human form, a knife pressed to Mara's throat. "Call him off," Vivian hissed in Mara's ear, "or I'll kill you right here." Mara froze. Kale saw them and stopped mid-strike. His eyes went wide. "Let her go," he said, his voice deadly calm. "Call off your warriors," Vivian said. "Surrender the children, or she dies." Kale's jaw clenched. "You know I can't do that." "Then she's dead," Vivian said. The knife pressed harder against Mara's throat. She felt a hot trickle of blood run down her neck. Time seemed to slow. Mara looked at Kyle, their eyes locking. She saw the torment in his gaze, the impossible choice laid before him, and she made her decision. "Don't you dare," Mara said to him. "Don't you dare surrender." Kale's eyes widened. "Mara." "Protect the children," Mara said. Her voice was steady, even as the knife bit deeper. "That's all that matters." "No!" Mara closed her eyes and let her wolf rise. Power exploded from her in a wave. It was like nothing she'd ever felt before. Heat and light and raw, primal energy. Vivian screamed and flew backward, the knife clattering to the ground. Mara's body convulsed. Her bones cracked and reformed. Her vision went white. When it cleared, she was standing in a form she didn't recognize. She was still a wolf, but larger, stronger. Her fur had turned silver white, and her eyes, she could see her reflection in a fallen shield, glowed like molten gold. Around her, the battlefield had gone silent. Everyone was staring. Elara's voice rang out from the walls, filled with awe and disbelief. "A guardian wolf," she breathed. "She's a guardian." Mara didn't understand. Her mind was spinning, her body thrumming with power. Kale shifted back to his human form, his eyes wide. "Mara," he said softly, "do you know what you are?" Mara shook her massive head. "Guardian wolves are ancient protectors," Kyle said. "Born once in a generation. They're stronger than alphas, faster than any wolf alive. And they exist for one purpose: to protect the innocent." Mara looked down at her paws. Massive, silver, crackling with energy. This was impossible. She'd been tested as a child. She was an Omega. Weak, unremarkable, wasn't she? "The tests were wrong," Elara called from the wall. "Or someone lied. Guardian wolves can be suppressed if they're convinced they're weak. It's a psychological block. But when they finally break free, they're unstoppable," Kale finished. Rylan, still in his wolf form, took a step back. His eyes were wide with fear. Mara felt the power coursing through her veins. She could feel the children beneath the mountain, their hearts beating in time with hers. She could feel every life on this battlefield, and she could feel the wrongness of Rylan's presence. He didn't belong here. Mara snarled, and the sound shook the ground. Rylan turned and ran. His warriors, seeing their alpha flee, broke rank and followed. The northern wolves cheered. Mara stood in the center of the battlefield, her sides heaving, her mind reeling. Kyle approached slowly, his hands raised. "Mara," he said gently, "it's over. You can shift back now." Mara tried, but the power wouldn't release her. She was trapped in this form, her wolf in full control. Panic surged through her. Kyle must have felt it through the bond because he moved closer, placing a hand on her massive head. "Breathe," he said. "I've got you. Just breathe." Mara focused on his voice, on the warmth of his hand, on the steady pull of the bond between them. Slowly, the power receded. Her bones shifted again, smaller this time, and she collapsed into her human form, naked and shaking in the snow. Kael immediately wrapped his cloak around her and pulled her into his arms. "I've got you," he murmured. "You're safe. You did it." Mara clung to him, her body trembling with exhaustion and shock. What just happened?" she whispered. "You saved us," Kael said simply. Around them, the warriors were tending to the wounded and securing the gates. The battle was over, but Mara knew this was far from finished. Rielan had retreated, but he wouldn't give up. Not now, not after being humiliated in front of his own warriors. He would come back, and next time, he would bring everything he had. They carried Mara to the infirmary where Alara checked her over with quick, efficient hands. No major injuries, Alara said, though her expression was troubled. "But the shift, Mara, do you have any idea how rare what you just did is?" Mara shook her head weakly. "Guardian wolves haven't been seen in over 200 years, Alara said. "Most people thought they were extinct, or a myth." "I don't understand," Mara said. "I was tested. They said I was Omega." "Someone lied to you," Alara said bluntly, "or suppressed the truth. Guardian wolves are threats to alphas who want absolute control. If someone figured out what you were as a child, they might have convinced you that you were weak to keep you under their thumb." Mara's mind raced. Who would have done that? Her parents were dead. She'd been raised in a pack orphanage, shuffled from one place to another. Had someone known? Had they deliberately crippled her? Kael entered the infirmary, his face grim. "Ryland's regrouping," he said. "Scouts report he's sent messengers to 3 neighboring packs. He's calling in favors, building a coalition." Mara's stomach sank. "How many?" "If they all answer," Kael said, "he could have 500 wolves within a week." 500. Against their 150. "We can't win that fight," Garrett said from the doorway. "No," Kael agreed. "We can't. Not in open battle." "Then what do we do?" Mara asked. Kael looked at her, his eyes hard. "We take the fight to him," he said. "Before he's ready." Garrett's eyes widened. "That's suicide." "It's strategic," Kael said. "Right now, he's vulnerable. His warriors are scattered, licking their wounds. If we strike fast and hard, we can cripple his command structure before the reinforcements arrive." "And if we fail?" Garrett asked. Kael's jaw tightened. "We won't." Mara stood, ignoring Alara's protests. "I'm coming with you," she said. "Mara, I'm a guardian wolf," Mara said, her voice firm. "You just said it yourself. I'm stronger than any alpha. You need me." Kael stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Fine," he said, "but you follow my lead. No heroics." Mara almost laughed. After everything she'd done, he was worried about heroics? But she nodded. "No heroics," she agreed. They left at dawn with 50 of Kael's best warriors. The plan was simple. Infiltrate Ryland's camp, take out his commanders, and force him into a position where he had no choice but to surrender or face execution by the Council for war crimes. It was dangerous. It was reckless. It was the only chance they had. They moved through the forest like shadows, silent and deadly. Mara's new senses were overwhelming. She could hear heartbeats from 100 yards away, smell fear and blood on the wind. It was intoxicating and terrifying. They reached Ryland's camp just before noon. It was smaller than Mara expected. Maybe 70 wolves, most of them wounded or resting. Rielan had sent the bulk of his forces back south to regroup. Perfect. Kael gave the signal. The attack was swift and brutal. Mara shifted into her guardian form, and the power surged through her like wildfire. She tore through the camp, scattering warriors and crushing tents. She was unstoppable. But in the chaos, she lost sight of Kael. Panic spiked through her. She pushed deeper into the camp, following the pull of the bond. And then she found him. Rielan had him cornered, a blade pressed to Kael's throat. "Call them off," Rielan snarled. "Or he dies." Mara froze. Kael's eyes met hers. "Don't," he said quietly. "Don't stop." But Mara couldn't move. Rielan smiled. "That's what I thought." He raised the blade, and Mara felt something inside her snap. The world went white. When her vision cleared, Rielan was on the ground, unconscious. Kyle was staring at her with wide eyes. "What did you do?" he asked. Mara looked down at her hands, human hands, crackling with silver light. I don't know, she whispered. But whatever it was, it had saved him. Kale pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. We need to go, he said. Now. They fled the camp with Ryland's unconscious body slung over Garrett's shoulder. By the time they reached the fortress, word had already spread. The Northern King and the Guardian Wolf had struck at the heart of the Southern Coalition, and they had won. But as Mara stood on the walls, looking out at the horizon, she knew this wasn't over. Ryland would wake up. And when he did, he would come for her with everything he had left. Ryland woke up in chains. He came to consciousness slowly, his head pounding, his vision blurred. When his eyes finally focused, he found himself in a stone cell deep beneath Kael's fortress. Heavy iron shackles bound his wrists and ankles, anchored to the wall behind him. He tested them once, then snarled in frustration. Don't bother, a voice said from the darkness. Those chains were forged specifically to hold alphas. Kael stepped into the torchlight, his expression cold. Ryland glared at him. You can't hold me here. The council will... The council has been informed, Kael said. You attacked my territory. You attempted to kidnap children under my protection, and you tried to execute my mate without trial. You're not going anywhere. Ryland's lip curled. She's not your mate. That bond is a lie. The blood test says otherwise, Kael said evenly. Then the test was rigged, Ryland snapped. Or she manipulated it somehow. That woman is a liar and a thief. That woman is a guardian wolf, Kael said, his voice cutting through Ryland's tirade like a blade. And you spent 3 years convincing her she was worthless. Tell me, Ryland, did you know what she was? Did you suppress her on purpose? Ryland's face went carefully blank. I don't know what you're talking about. But Kael saw the flicker of recognition in his eyes. You did know, Kael said softly. You knew exactly what she was, and you buried it because you were afraid she'd be stronger than you. Ryland said nothing. Kael leaned closer, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. You made a mistake rejecting her, because now she's mine, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what you tried to do. He turned and walked out, leaving Ryland alone in the darkness. Mara stood in the children's wing, watching the pups play. They were laughing and chasing each other, their earlier fear forgotten. It filled her heart with a warmth she couldn't name. Sophie, the little girl with green eyes, ran over and hugged Mara's legs. Miss Mara, is it true? She asked, her eyes wide. Are you really magic? Mara knelt down and smoothed Sophie's hair. I'm not magic, sweetheart. I'm just different. Different is good, Sophie said solemnly. My mama used to say different people are the ones who change the world. Mara's throat tightened. Your mama was very wise. Sophie beamed and ran back to the other children. Alara appeared at Mara's side. You're good with them. They're easy to love, Mara said softly. Alara was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I've been doing some research about guardian wolves. Mara looked at her. And? They're not just protectors, Alara said. They're healers too, emotional healers. They can sense trauma, pain, fear, and they can help soothe it. That's why the children trust you so completely. They feel safe with you. Mara looked back at the playing children, her heart aching. I didn't know. Most guardians don't, Alara said. The gift only manifests when they're around those who truly need them. Mara thought about the trek through the wasteland, the way the children had stayed calm even when they were freezing and starving, the way they'd trusted her to keep them safe. She'd thought it was just survival, but maybe it had been something more. There's something else, Alara said, her voice hesitant. Guardian wolves are incredibly rare, and in the old days, alphas would hunt them, kill them before they could reach maturity. Mara's blood ran cold. Why? Because guardians can't be controlled, Alara said. They don't follow alpha commands. They don't submit to pack hierarchy. They only answer to their own moral compass. And that made them dangerous to alphas who wanted absolute power. Mara felt sick. You think someone tried to kill me? I think someone tried to suppress you, Alara said. Convince you that you were weak so you'd never realize your true nature. It's a form of psychological conditioning. If a guardian wolf believes they're Omega, they'll never access their power. Mara's hands clenched. Who would do that to a child? Alar's expression was grim. Someone who was afraid of what you might become. Over the next few days, Mara couldn't shake the conversation. She spent hours in the fortress library, reading every scrap of information about guardian wolves she could find. The texts were old, most of them fragmented or damaged. But a pattern emerged. Guardian wolves had once been common, maybe one in every 1,000 births. They served as protectors, mediators, and healers within packs. They had no interest in leadership, but they could challenge alphas who abused their power. Then, about 250 years ago, the purges began. Alpha after alpha claimed that guardians in their packs had become dangerous, unstable, a threat to order. The High Council, dominated by powerful alphas, agreed. A systematic hunt began. Within 50 years, every known guardian was dead. The official histories called it a necessary culling. But the private journals Mara found told a different story. Guardians who'd been executed for crimes that sounded suspiciously like standing up to corrupt alphas. Children killed before they could manifest their powers. Entire families wiped out on suspicion of carrying guardian blood. It was genocide. And someone had tried to do the same thing to her, just more subtly. "You're thinking too loud," Kael said, appearing in the library doorway. Mara looked up, her eyes haunted. "Did you know? About the purges?" Kael's expression was grim. "Some of it. The official history is taught to all alpha heirs, but I suspect the truth is much darker. Someone tried to destroy me before I could become a threat," Mara said. "They convinced me I was weak, worthless, Omega. They buried my nature so deep I never questioned it." "Who?" Kael asked. "I don't know," Mara said, frustration evident in her voice. "I was moved between orphanages constantly as a child. Different packs, different caretakers. Any one of them could have—" She stopped, a memory surfacing. "Wait. There was one woman at the first orphanage. She was obsessed with testing me. Blood tests, strength tests, psychological evaluations. And after each one, she'd tell me I was defective, broken, that I'd never be strong." Kael's jaw tightened. "Do you remember her name?" "Meredith," Mara said slowly. "Meredith Blackwood. She ran the Southern Foundling Home." "I'll have Garrett look into it," Kael said. "But Mara, even if we find out who did this, it doesn't change what you are now. You're not broken. You never were." Mara stood and moved into his arms, letting herself be held. "I know, but I keep thinking about all the years I wasted believing their lies. All the times I could have been stronger, braver." "You were always brave," Kael said firmly. "You survived their attempts to destroy you. That takes more strength than they'll ever understand." 3 days later, the summons came. The High Council, the governing body of all wolf packs across the northern and southern territories, requested Mara's presence. Not requested, demanded. "They want to evaluate you," Kael said, reading the letter. His jaw was tight with barely controlled anger. "To determine if you pose a threat." Mara's stomach dropped. "What happens if they decide I do?" "They can't do anything to you," Kael said firmly. "You're under my protection." "But they can make life difficult for everyone around me," Mara said. She thought of the children, of the warriors who'd fought beside her, of the pack that had welcomed her. "I won't let them suffer because of me. Mara, I'll go," she said. "I'll face the council." Kael's eyes flashed. "Not alone." "Together then," Mara said. Garrett appeared in the doorway, his expression troubled. "There's more. I did some digging on Meredith Blackwood like you asked." "And?" Kael prompted. "She's dead," Garrett said. "Died 15 years ago. But before she ran the Foundling Home, she was an advisor to the High Council. Specifically, she worked on something called the Bloodline Purity Initiative." Mara's blood ran cold. "What was that?" "A program designed to identify and eliminate dangerous bloodlines," Garrett said, his voice tight with disgust. "Officially, it was disbanded 70 years ago. But according to the records I found, Meredith continued the work privately. She tested thousands of children over her career, and any who showed signs of guardian heritage were—" He paused. "The records used the word corrected." "How many?" Mara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Garrett met her eyes. "At least 300 children, maybe more. The records are incomplete." Mara felt like she'd been punched in the gut. 300 potential guardians, destroyed before they could awaken. That's why you're so important, Garrett continued. You're the first guardian to survive their protocol and manifest anyway. You're proof that their system failed. Which makes me a threat, Mara said. To those who want to keep guardians extinct, yes, Garrett agreed. The council summons isn't just about evaluation. It's about control. They need to know if you're going to be a problem. Kale's expression was dangerous. Then we'll show them exactly what kind of problem we can be. The journey to the High Council chambers took 3 days. They traveled with a larger escort this time, Garrett, Alara, and 20 of Kael's most trusted warriors. The children stayed behind, safe in the fortress under heavy guard. Saying goodbye to them had been the hardest part. Sophie had clung to Mara, tears streaming down her face. What if they don't let you come back? Mara had knelt down and taken the girl's face in her hands. Then Kael will bring me back, or I'll fight my way back. But I will come back, Sophie, I promise. Do you swear? Sophie had asked, her voice trembling. I swear on my life, Mara had said. Nothing will keep me from you. Nothing. Now as they approached the council chambers, Mara felt that promise weighing on her like a stone. The building sat in the center of the territories, neutral ground where no single pack held power. It was ancient, built from white stone that seemed to glow in the winter light. Carved into the walls were the names of every council member who'd ever served. Mara's eyes caught on one name, Meredith Blackwood. She'd been a council member, a person of power and influence, and she'd used that power to destroy children. Inside, the chamber was circular, with seats arranged in tiers rising up the walls. 12 council members sat in judgment, representatives from the most powerful packs in the region. Mara and Kael stood in the center, surrounded. The head of the council, an elderly she-wolf named Cassian, spoke first. Mara Whitlock, Guardian of the North, you stand before us because your very existence raises questions that must be answered. Mara lifted her chin. What questions? Whether you can be trusted, Cassian said bluntly. Guardian wolves were eliminated for a reason. They refused to acknowledge alpha authority. They disrupted pack hierarchy, and their power made them nearly impossible to control. I don't want to disrupt anything, Mara said. I just want to protect the children under my care. Noble words, another council member said. A male alpha with cold eyes named Damon. But power corrupts. Today you protect children. Tomorrow you might decide you know better than the alphas who've maintained order for centuries. Is that what you call what Rylan did? Mara asked, her voice sharp. Order? He tried to execute 19 children to save resources. One bad alpha doesn't condemn the entire system, Demon shot back. But one good guardian condemns all guardians? Mara countered. Why is that? The chamber erupted in argument. Cassian raised her hand for silence. Enough. Mara Whitlock, we must determine your intentions. Will you submit to Alpha Law? Will you acknowledge the authority of the packs? Mara felt every eye in the room on her. This was the moment, the choice that would define everything that came after. She could submit, play by their rules, make herself small and acceptable, or she could tell the truth. I will not submit to unjust laws, Mara said clearly. I will not stand by while children are harmed. I will not be silent when I see cruelty disguised as order, but I have no desire to overthrow anyone or disrupt pack life. I only want to protect those who cannot protect themselves. That's not an answer, Demon said, his voice hard. It's the only answer I have, Mara said. I'm not your enemy, but I'm not your subject either. I'm a guardian, and I will act according to my nature, which is to defend the innocent. The council murmured among themselves, their voices rising in discord. This is exactly what we feared, Demon said, standing. A guardian who refuses to acknowledge our authority, who sets herself above our laws. This is how it started before. This is how entire territories fell into chaos. Or maybe, a new voice said, that's just what you were told. Everyone turned. An ancient male wolf stood in the doorway, leaning heavily on a carved staff. His fur was completely white, his face lined with age, but his eyes were sharp and clear. Elder Marcus, Cassian said, surprise evident in her voice. We didn't expect— I'm sure you didn't, Marcus said, shuffling into the chamber. But when I heard you were putting a guardian on trial, I knew I had to come. This isn't a trial, Cassian said carefully. Isn't it? Marcus looked around the chamber. 12 alphas sitting in judgment of one wolf who's done nothing but save children. Sounds like a trial to me. Demon's eyes narrowed. Elder Marcus, with all due respect, this doesn't concern you. It concerns every wolf in these territories, Marcus said. He turned to face the council, his voice growing stronger. I was there, during the purges. I was just a pup, but I remember. The chamber went silent. The official story, Marcus continued, is that guardians became dangerous, that they refused to follow laws and threatened our way of life. But that's not what happened. Elder Marcus, Demon started. Let him speak, Cassian said sharply. Marcus nodded at her, then continued. Guardians weren't killed because they were dangerous. They were killed because they were inconvenient. They stood between alphas and the wolves those alphas wanted to exploit. They protected the weak, the sick, the unwanted. And when alphas started treating pack members as disposable resources, guardians fought back. He paused, his eyes sweeping the chamber. So the alphas formed a coalition. They spread lies about guardians being unstable, power-hungry, dangerous, and they hunted them down systematically. By the time anyone realized what was really happening, it was too late. The last guardian died protecting a group of orphaned pups from being sold into slavery. Mara's breath caught. It was exactly what Alara's grandmother had done. That's ancient history, Demon said. The world is different now. Is it? Marcus asked. Because from where I'm standing, this young woman did exactly what that last guardian did. She protected children from an alpha who wanted them dead. And now you're trying to decide if she's too dangerous to live. We're not, Demon started. Aren't you? Marcus challenged. Because it sounds to me like you're more afraid of her morality than her power. The chamber erupted in argument again. Kale stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chaos. Enough. You want to know if Mara can be trusted? Look at what she's done. She risked her life to save children who weren't even hers. She crossed 100 miles of frozen wasteland while being hunted. She defeated an alpha in single combat, not for power, but to protect the innocent. What more proof do you need? Pretty words from a mate trying to protect his bond, Demon said coldly. But the fact remains, she's shown she won't follow our laws. What happens when she decides those laws are unjust? When she starts gathering other wolves who feel the same way? We could have a rebellion on our hands. Or, Cassian said quietly, we could have a solution to a problem we've ignored for too long. All eyes turned to her. Cassian stood, her old bones creaking. For decades, we've received reports of alphas abusing their power, executing pack members without trial, selling children, forcing matings. And what have we done? We've looked the other way, told ourselves it's pack business, that we have no authority to interfere. She looked directly at Mara. But a guardian does have that authority. It's literally in their nature to protect the vulnerable, regardless of pack boundaries. What if instead of seeing her as a threat, we saw her as an opportunity? An opportunity for what? Demon demanded. Balance, Cassian said. Guardians and alphas working together. Alphas handle governance and defense. Guardians handle protection and justice for those who fall through the cracks. It's what the system was meant to be before we destroyed it. That's insane, Demon said. You want to give her authority equal to an alpha. I want to recognize the authority she already has, Cassian said. Guardian wolves don't need our permission to protect the weak. They'll do it anyway. The question is whether we work with them or against them. And if we choose against? Demon asked. Cassian's eyes were hard. Then we're no better than the alphas who started the purges. We're choosing power over justice, control over compassion. Is that really the legacy we want to leave? The chamber fell silent. Then from the back, a council member Mara didn't recognize spoke up. I vote to recognize Mara Whitlock as a legitimate guardian with autonomous authority in matters of protection and child welfare. Another member stood. I second that motion. Then another. I vote in favor. Within minutes, 7 of the 12 council members had voted in favor. A majority. Demon's face was twisted with rage, but he said nothing. Cassian nodded slowly. Then it settled. Mara Whitlock, you are hereby recognized as Guardian of the North with all rights and responsibilities that entails. You will have the authority to investigate claims of abuse, provide sanctuary to those in need, and challenge alphas who violate basic standards of care. However, you will also be subject to council review. Abuse your authority, and it will be revoked. Do you accept these terms? Mara's voice was thick with emotion. I do. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Cassian said, but her eyes were kind. This won't make you popular. There will be alphas who see this as a direct challenge to their power. You'll face opposition, possibly violence. I can handle it, Mara said. I know you can, Cassian said softly. That's why I voted for you. As they left the chamber, Demon blocked their path, his face a mask of cold fury. This isn't over, he said quietly, his voice meant only for Mara and Kael. You've made powerful enemies today, and not all of them are as obvious as me. Is that a threat? Kael asked, his voice dangerous. It's a prediction, Demon said. You've upset the natural order. There will be consequences. Then we'll face them, Mara said, meeting his eyes without flinching. Together. Demon's smile was thin and cold. We'll see how long that lasts. He swept past them, his enforcers following. Garrett appeared at their side, his expression troubled. He's going to be a problem. Let him try, Kael said grimly. We've faced worse. But as they walked out of the council building into the bright winter sunlight, Mara couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was just beginning. Tut. They returned to the fortress to find chaos. Refugees had arrived, dozens of them, maybe more. Wolves fleeing packs where word of the council's decision had already spread and been met with violence. They're killing anyone who speaks favorably about Guardians, one woman told Mara, her face bruised and bloody. My alpha said anyone who supported the council's decision was a traitor. He executed 3 wolves this morning. I grabbed my children and ran. Another refugee, an older male, had similar stories. Alpha Dane went on a rampage, said Guardians were an abomination, and anyone who disagreed was exiled. I've been with that pack for 40 years. Now I have nowhere to go. Mara listened to story after story, her heart breaking with each one. We need to help them, she told Kael. We will, Kael said, but we need a plan. We can't house everyone in the fortress. That night, Mara barely slept. Her mind raced with possibilities, problems, solutions. By dawn, she had an idea. She found Kael in the war room, already awake and reviewing supply reports. I want to build a sanctuary, she said without preamble. Kael looked up. Explain. A place separate from the fortress but under our protection, Mara said, her words coming faster as the vision solidified in her mind. Somewhere wolves who don't fit into traditional packs can go. Orphans, outcasts, refugees, anyone who needs safety. We give them housing, training, purpose. We build a community based on protection and mutual support instead of hierarchy and power. That would require massive resources, Kael said slowly. Land, materials, food, personnel. I know, Mara said, but I think we can do it. The council recognized my authority. That means I can formally request aid from allied packs, and wolves who believe in what we're building will come to help. Kael studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled. You're not thinking small, are you? Why should I? Mara asked. We have a chance to build something genuinely new, something that could change how packs operate across all the territories. Why waste that opportunity on half measures? Kael stood and crossed to her, cupping her face in his hands. Have I told you lately that you're extraordinary? Mara felt heat rise in her cheeks. You might have mentioned it. Well, it's worth repeating, Kael said, and kissed her. When they pulled apart, Mara was smiling. So we're doing this? We're doing this, Tess, Kael confirmed. Let's build your sanctuary. The planning took weeks. They chose a valley 5 miles north of the fortress, sheltered from the worst of the winter storms, with a river running through it and fertile soil for farming. It was unclaimed land, technically neutral territory, which meant they could build without infringing on any pack's borders. Kael sent out messages to every allied pack, requesting assistance. To his surprise, the response was overwhelming. Packs sent workers, materials, food. Some sent warriors to help with defense. Others sent teachers, healers, craftsmen. Even some of the council members who'd voted against Mara sent aid, their messages carefully worded to avoid seeming like endorsements, but clearly indicating they saw value in the project. It's because they're scared, Garrett explained as they reviewed the latest shipment of supplies. The refugee crisis is spreading. More and more wolves are fleeing packs with hardline alphas. Those alphas are causing instability, and the council knows it. Your sanctuary gives the refugees somewhere to go instead of wandering loose or forming rogue bands. So they're supporting me because I'm convenient, Mara said. They're supporting you because you're solving a problem they can't, Garrett corrected. That's still support. Mara worked alongside the construction crews, her guardian strength allowing her to do the work of 3 normal wolves. She hauled timber, dug foundations, raised walls. The physical labor felt good, purposeful. The children helped too. They were too young for heavy work, but they carried supplies, fetched water, and kept spirits high with their laughter and games. Sophie appointed herself Mara's assistant, following her everywhere and asking endless questions. "Why are we building it so big, Mama?" she asked one day as they surveyed the foundation of what would become the Great Hall. "Because I want there to be room for everyone who needs it," Mara said. "No one should ever be turned away because we didn't plan for enough space." "What if bad wolves come?" Sophie asked, her young face serious. "Wolves who want to hurt us." Mara knelt down. "Then we'll protect each other. That's what family does." "Are we a family?" Sophie asked. "Even though we're not all related?" "Especially because we're not all related," Mara said. "Family isn't just about blood. It's about who you choose to love and protect." Sophie thought about this for a moment, then nodded solemnly. "Then we're the biggest family in the world." Mara hugged her tight, blinking back tears. "Yes, sweetheart, we are." By midsummer, the sanctuary was taking shape. Rows of cabins lined the valley floor. The Great Hall stood at the center, a massive structure built from stone and timber, with a soaring ceiling and space for hundreds to gather. Fields had been cleared and planted with crops. A school was under construction, along with an infirmary, workshops, and storage buildings. And at the entrance to the valley, a massive wooden gate was being carved with an inscription Mara had labored over for hours. "No one is worthless. No one is forgotten." The dedication ceremony was set for the autumn equinox. Invitations went out to every pack in the territories, along with an open invitation to any wolf who needed sanctuary. The response was staggering. Hundreds of wolves arrived in the days leading up to the ceremony. Some came out of curiosity. Others came seeking refuge. Still others came to see if the stories about the guardian wolf were true. Among the arrivals was Elder Marcus, looking frailer than before, but with his eyes still bright with purpose. "I had to see it with my own eyes," he told Mara as she showed him around the valley. "A sanctuary for guardians and those they protect. I never thought I'd live to see such a thing." "You helped make it possible," Mara said. "Your testimony at the council changed everything." "I only spoke the truth," Marcus said. "You're the one who had the courage to act on it." The night before the dedication, Kyle found Mara sitting on a hill overlooking the sanctuary, watching the lights come on in the cabins as families settled in for the evening. "Having second thoughts?" he asked, settling beside her. "More like overwhelming thoughts," Mara admitted. "A few months ago, I was a rejected Omega running for my life. Now I'm responsible for hundreds of wolves. What if I fail them? What if this all falls apart?" "Then we'll rebuild," Kyle said simply. "But you won't fail. You couldn't even if you tried." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I know you," Kyle said. "You're the wolf who dragged 19 children through a frozen wasteland because you couldn't bear to see them hurt. You don't know how to fail the people you love." Mara leaned against him, drawing strength from his presence and the bond between them. "I love you," she said quietly. "I love you too," Kyle replied. "And tomorrow, we're going to show the world what we've built together." The dedication ceremony dawned clear and cold, with frost sparkling on the grass like diamonds. Wolves gathered in the valley by the hundreds, far more than Mara had expected. Representatives from every major pack were there, along with dozens of minor packs and independent wolves. Even Cassian had come, despite her age making travel difficult. Kale stepped up to a raised platform at the center of the gathering. "We come together today to dedicate this sanctuary," he said, his voice carrying across the valley. "A place built on the principle that every wolf deserves safety, dignity, and a chance to thrive. This sanctuary exists because one wolf refused to accept that children were disposable, because Mara Whitlock chose compassion over convenience, courage over comfort. He looked at Mara, his eyes full of love and pride. She's shown us that true strength isn't about dominating others, it's about protecting them. And today, we honor that truth by opening these gates to anyone who needs refuge. The crowd erupted in applause. Mara stepped forward, her hands trembling slightly but her voice steady. "I'm not good at speeches," she said, and there was warm laughter. "But I want to say this. Every wolf here has been told they're not enough at some point, not strong enough, not useful enough, not worthy enough. Those are lies. Every single one of you has value. Every single one of you deserves a place in this world." She paused, letting her eyes sweep across the gathered wolves. "This sanctuary is proof that we can build something better, that we don't have to accept a system that throws people away. And I promise you, as long as I'm standing, these gates will remain open. No one will be turned away who truly needs help." The applause this time was deafening, accompanied by howls of approval. The children rushed forward and surrounded Mara, hugging her from all sides. Other wolves followed, wanting to shake her hand, to thank her, to be part of this moment. Kael watched it all with a full heart, knowing that this, right here, was what they'd fought for. Not just victory, but hope. That night, as the celebrations continued around bonfires scattered throughout the valley, Kael pulled Mara aside. "I have something for you," he said. He led her to a quiet spot overlooking the sanctuary where a single lantern burned. From his pocket, he pulled a small box and opened it. Inside was a ring, simple silver, engraved with the crest of the northern pack intertwined with the symbol of the guardian wolves. "We're already mated," Kael said. "The bond is real and permanent, but I want to make it official in every way possible. In the eyes of the packs, the council, and the world." He met her eyes. "Mara Whitlock, will you marry me?" Mara's vision blurred with tears. For a moment she couldn't speak. Then she nodded, laughing through her tears. "Yes. Yes, of course, yes." Kael slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a kiss that felt like coming home. When they finally pulled apart, Mara rested her forehead against his. "I never thought I'd have this," she whispered. "Love, family, a purpose. I thought I'd die alone in that wasteland." "Instead, you found everything," Kael said, "and you gave everything too. To me, to the children, to every wolf who needed hope." They stood together in the lantern light, looking down at the sanctuary spread out below them, lights glowing in windows, voices rising in song, a community finding its footing. This was just the beginning, but it was a beginning worth fighting for, worth living for, worth everything. But Kael was wrong. It wasn't over. The rogue army had knelt, yes, but surrender on a battlefield didn't erase the rot that had brought them there. As Mara stood among the kneeling wolves, she felt it, a wrongness in the air, a tension that made her guardian instincts scream. "Something's not right," she whispered to Kael. He followed her gaze to where Rylan lay in the dirt, gasping and defeated. The former alpha's eyes were wild, darting between Mara and his scattered forces. "Garrett," Kael called, "take him into custody." But before Garrett could move, Rylan lunged to his feet with a speed that shouldn't have been possible for someone so injured. His hand went to his belt, and Mara saw the flash of silver, a blade, small and curved, coated in something dark. "If I can't have them," Rylan snarled, "neither can you." He wasn't running toward Mara or Kael. He was running toward the fortress, toward the children. Mara's heart stopped. The children were safe in the deep shelters, but Rylan knew this fortress. He'd been inside during the tribunal. If he knew about the shelters, if he could find them. She shifted into her guardian form in mid-stride and launched after him. Rylan was fast, fueled by desperation and madness. But Mara was faster. She caught him at the fortress gates, tackling him to the ground. The blade clattered from his hand, and Mara pinned him with her massive paws. "You'll never touch them," she growled. Rylan laughed, a horrible, broken sound. "You think you've won? You think this is over? I'm not the only one who sees what you are. There are others, alphas who fear guardians, who remember the old purges. They'll come for you, Mara. They'll come for all of you. His words sent ice through her veins. Before she could respond, Reeland's body began to convulse. Foam appeared at his lips, his eyes rolling back. Poison, Alara's voice rang out as she ran toward them. He's taken poison. Mara shifted back to human form, staring down at the man who had tried to destroy her. Even now, dying by his own hand, he was trying to plant seeds of fear. Kale appeared at her side. Let him go, Mara. He's not worth it. But Mara knelt beside Rylan, looking into his fading eyes. I forgive you, she said quietly. Reeland's eyes widened in shock. Why? He choked out. Because hating you would poison me the same way it poisoned you, Mara said, and I refuse to become what you feared. Ryland's lips moved, but no sound came out. Then his eyes went blank, and he was gone. Mara stood, her whole body trembling. The battlefield was silent. Kale pulled her into his arms. It's done. It's really done. Mara wanted to believe him, but Ryland's last words echoed in her mind. There are others. The aftermath of Ryland's death rippled across the territories like a stone thrown into still water. The rogue army disbanded, most of them slipping back into the wilderness. A few, the youngest ones, those who'd been forced into service, asked for asylum in the Northern Territory. Kyle granted it, but with conditions. They would work, contribute, and prove their loyalty. Messages arrived from packs across the region. Some sent congratulations. Others sent thinly veiled warnings. They're scared, Garrett said one evening as they reviewed the correspondence. Guardian wolves haven't existed in over 2 centuries. Now you've appeared, defeated an alpha in single combat, and made 300 rogues kneel. That's the stuff of legends, and legends make people nervous. Mara rubbed her temples. I didn't ask for any of this. That's what makes you dangerous, Garrett said, but his tone was gentle. You don't want power, which means you can't be bought or controlled. That terrifies alphas who rely on hierarchy and fear. Kale entered the room, snowflakes dusting his shoulders. Stop scaring her, Garrett. I'm not scaring her. I'm preparing her, Garrett said. She needs to understand what she represents. What do I represent? Mara asked. Garrett met her eyes. Change. The possibility that strength doesn't have to come with cruelty. That protection is worth more than domination. Every alpha who rules through fear sees you as a threat to their power. Mara felt the weight of it settle on her shoulders like a physical thing. Kyle moved to her side, his hand finding hers. Then we'll face them together. Over the following days, Mara threw herself into helping the former rogues integrate into the pack. Many of them were young, barely more than teenagers, who'd been orphaned or exiled and had nowhere else to go. They reminded her of the 19 children she'd saved. She worked alongside them, teaching them skills, listening to their stories, helping them heal from the trauma of their past lives. Her guardian instincts hummed constantly, guiding her to those who needed help the most. One evening, she was tending to a young male named Finn who'd been badly injured during the battle. He was maybe 17 with haunted eyes and a body covered in scars. Why are you being so kind to us? He asked as Mara changed his bandages. We attacked your home. You were following orders, Mara said gently. That doesn't make you evil. It makes you a survivor. I killed people in that battle, Finn whispered, his eyes filling with tears. Northern warriors, good people. Mara paused, her hands stilling. War forces us to do terrible things, but what matters is what we do after. You can carry that guilt forever, or you can honor those deaths by becoming someone worth saving. Finn looked at her with something like wonder. How are you so... He struggled for the word. Good? Mara smiled sadly. I'm not good, Finn. I'm just someone who knows what it's like to be thrown away. And I refuse to let anyone else feel that way if I can help it. From the doorway, Kyle watched the exchange, his heart swelling with pride and love. 3 weeks later, the summons came. The High Council, the governing body of all wolf packs across the Northern and Southern territories, requested Mara's presence. Not requested, demanded. They want to evaluate you, Kyle said, reading the letter. His jaw was tight with barely controlled anger. To determine if you pose a threat. Mara's stomach dropped. What happens if they decide I do? They can't do anything to you, Kael said firmly. You're under my protection. But they can make life difficult for everyone around me, Mara said. She thought of the children, of the warriors who'd fought beside her, of the pack that had welcomed her. I won't let them suffer because of me. Mara, I'll go, she said. I'll face the council. Kael's eyes flashed. Not alone. Together then, Mara said. Garrett leaned forward. You need to understand what you're walking into. The High Council hasn't convened for a Guardian evaluation in over 200 years. The last time they did, they ordered all Guardians hunted down and executed. That was different, Kael said sharply. Was it? Garrett challenged. The official record says Guardians became too powerful, too independent. They refused to acknowledge Alpha authority and started forming their own communities. Sound familiar? Mara's hands clenched. I'm not trying to overthrow anyone. They won't care about your intentions, Garrett said. They'll care about precedent. And the precedent is that Guardians are dangerous. Then I'll have to convince them otherwise, Mara said. The journey to the High Council chambers took 3 days. They traveled with a small escort, Garrett, Ilara, and 6 of Kael's most trusted warriors. The children stayed behind, safe in the fortress under heavy guard. Saying goodbye to them had been the hardest part. Sophie had clung to Mara, tears streaming down her face. What if they don't let you come back? Mara had knelt down and taken the girl's face in her hands. Then Kael will bring me back, or I'll fight my way back. But I will come back, Sophie. I promise. Now as they approached the council chambers, Mara felt that promise weighing on her like a stone. The building sat in the center of the territories, neutral ground where no single pack held power. It was ancient, built from white stone that seemed to glow in the winter light. Inside, the chamber was circular, with seats arranged in tiers rising up the walls. 12 council members sat in judgment, representatives from the most powerful packs in the region. Mara and Kael stood in the center, surrounded. The head of the council, an elderly she-wolf named Cassian, spoke first. Mara Whitlock, Guardian of the North, you stand before us because your very existence raises questions that must be answered. Mara lifted her chin. What questions? Whether you can be trusted, Cassian said bluntly. Guardian wolves were eliminated for a reason. They refused to acknowledge Alpha authority. They disrupted pack hierarchy, and their power made them nearly impossible to control. I don't want to disrupt anything, Mara said. I just want to protect the children under my care. Noble words, another council member said. A male alpha with cold eyes named Damon. But power corrupts. Today you protect children. Tomorrow you might decide you know better than the alphas who've maintained order for centuries. Is that what you call what Rylan did? Mara asked, her voice sharp. Order? He tried to execute 19 children to save resources. One bad alpha doesn't condemn the entire system, Demon shot back. But one good guardian condemns all guardians? Mara countered. The chamber erupted in argument. Cassian raised her hand for silence. Enough. Mara Whitlock, we must determine your intentions. Will you submit to Alpha Law? Will you acknowledge the authority of the packs? Mara felt every eye in the room on her. This was the moment. The choice that would define everything that came after. She could submit, play by their rules, make herself small and acceptable, or she could tell the truth. I will not submit to unjust laws, Mara said clearly. I will not stand by while children are harmed. I will not be silent when I see cruelty disguised as order, but I have no desire to overthrow anyone or disrupt pack life. I only want to protect those who cannot protect themselves. That's not an answer, Demon said, his voice hard. It's the only answer I have, Mara said. I'm not your enemy, but I'm not your subject either. I'm a guardian, and I will act according to my nature, which is to defend the innocent. The council murmured among themselves, their voices rising in discord. This is exactly what we feared, Demon said, standing. A guardian who refuses to acknowledge our authority, who sets herself above our laws. This is how it started before. This is how entire territories fell into chaos. Or maybe, a new voice said, that's just what you were told. Everyone turned. An ancient male wolf stood in the doorway, leaning heavily on a carved staff. His fur was completely white, his face lined with age, but his eyes were sharp and clear. Elder Marcus? Cassian said, surprise evident in her voice. We didn't expect— I'm sure you didn't, Marcus said, shuffling into the chamber. But when I heard you were putting a guardian on trial, I knew I had to come. This isn't a trial, Cassian said carefully. Isn't it? Marcus looked around the chamber. 12 alphas sitting in judgment of one wolf who's done nothing but save children. Sounds like a trial to me. Demon's eyes narrowed. Elder Marcus, with all due respect, this doesn't concern you. It concerns every wolf in these territories, Marcus said. He turned to face the council, his voice growing stronger. I was there, during the purges. I was just a pup, but I remember. The chamber went silent. The official story, Marcus continued, is that guardians became dangerous, that they refused to follow laws and threatened our way of life. But that's not what happened. Elder Marcus, Demon started. Let him speak, Cassian said sharply. Marcus nodded at her, then continued. Guardians weren't killed because they were dangerous. They were killed because they were inconvenient. They stood between alphas and the wolves those alphas wanted to exploit. They protected the weak, the sick, the unwanted. And when alphas started treating pack members as disposable resources, guardians fought back. He paused, his eyes sweeping the chamber. So the alphas formed a coalition. They spread lies about guardians being unstable, power-hungry, dangerous, and they hunted them down systematically. By the time anyone realized what was really happening, it was too late. The last guardian died protecting a group of orphaned pups from being sold into slavery. Mara's breath caught. It was exactly what Alara's grandmother had done. That's ancient history, Demon said. The world is different now. Is it? Marcus asked. Because from where I'm standing, this young woman did exactly what that last guardian did. She protected children from an alpha who wanted them dead. And now you're trying to decide if she's too dangerous to live. We're not, Demon started. Aren't you? Marcus challenged. Because it sounds to me like you're more afraid of her morality than her power. The chamber erupted in argument again. Cassian let it continue for a moment, then raised her hand. Enough. Elder Marcus has raised valid points. Perhaps we've been approaching this wrong. She turned to Mara. Tell me, Guardian, if we recognize your right to exist, to use your power, what would you do? Mara took a deep breath. I would create a sanctuary, a place where wolves who don't fit into traditional packs can go. Orphans, outcasts, those who've been rejected or exiled. I'd give them a home, teach them skills, help them build lives worth living. A sanctuary outside pack law, Demon said, answering to no one. Answering to basic decency, Mara countered, to the principle that every life has value, that no one should be thrown away because they're not useful enough. Cassian studied her for a long moment. And if an alpha objected, if they claimed you were harboring their rightful pack members, then we'd investigate, Mara said. If someone fled because they were being abused or exploited, they'd stay. If they fled to escape legitimate justice, we'd return them. I'm not trying to undermine pack law. I'm trying to provide an alternative for those who don't belong in that system. That's a dangerous precedent, another council member said, a female alpha named Vera. More dangerous than executing children? Mara asked quietly. Vera had the grace to look uncomfortable. Kyle spoke for the first time. The Northern Pack supports this sanctuary. We'll help build it, defend it, and ensure it operates within reasonable boundaries. But we won't abandon it, and we won't abandon her. Neither will I, Elder Marcus said. I'm old. I won't live to see the full fruits of this sanctuary, but I'll spend whatever time I have left supporting it. One by one, other wolves in the chamber began to stand. The Eastern Pack supports this, one said. The Riverside Pack as well, said another. Within minutes, half the chamber was standing in support. Cassian looked at the divided room and sighed. It seems we have a decision to make. She turned to the other council members. All in favor of recognizing Mara Whitlock as a legitimate guardian and granting her the right to establish a sanctuary under council oversight? 7 hands rose. A majority. Cassian nodded slowly. Then it's settled. Mara Whitlock, you are hereby recognized as Guardian of the North, with all rights and responsibilities that entails. You may establish your sanctuary, but it will be subject to council review. Abuse your position, and we will revoke this privilege. Do you understand? Mara's voice was thick with emotion. I understand, thank you. Don't thank me yet, Cassian said. This won't make you popular. There will be alphas who see this as a threat. You'll face challenges, opposition, maybe worse. I can handle it, Mara said. Cassian's eyes softened. I believe you can. As they left the chamber, Damon blocked their path. This isn't over, he said quietly. You've set a precedent today that will come back to haunt us all. Or save us all, Mara said. I guess we'll find out. Demon's eyes were cold. Yes, we will. They returned to the fortress to cheers. Word had spread quickly. The Guardian had been recognized, legitimized. Mara was no longer a rogue Omega or a controversial queen. She was something new, something the world hadn't seen in over 200 years. The children mobbed her the moment she entered the Great Hall, their voices overlapping in excitement. Did you really face the whole council? Are we safe now? Can we stay forever? Mara knelt down and gathered as many of them as she could into her arms. Yes, sweethearts, we're safe. We can stay. This is home. Sophie hugged her tight. I knew you'd win. You always win. Mara's throat tightened. Not always, but I try. That night, Kael found her on the fortress walls, staring out at the mountains. You've been quiet, he said. Mara smiled. Just thinking. About? Everything, Mara said. A month ago, I was rejected and broken. Now She gestured helplessly. I don't even know what I am. Kael moved closer, wrapping his arms around her from behind. You're my mate, a guardian, a mother to 19 children, and the strongest person I've ever met. Mara leaned back against his chest. I'm scared, Kael. Cassian was right. There will be wolves who see me as a threat. What if I can't protect everyone? What if— You're not alone, Kael said firmly. You have me, you have this pack, and you have a bond that makes you stronger than you realize. Mara turned in his arms to face him. The bond. We should talk about that. Kael's eyes were warm. What about it? It's real, Mara said. Not political, not strategic. Real. I know, Kael said softly. When did you know? Mara asked. Kael thought for a moment. When I saw you willing to sacrifice yourself for those children, when I realized that you weren't just brave, you were good. Genuinely, impossibly good, and I wanted to be better because of you. Mara's eyes filled with tears. I didn't think I deserved this. Happiness, love, a family. You deserve everything, Kael said, cupping her face, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it to you. He kissed her then, and the bond between them flared bright and warm. When they pulled apart, Mara was smiling. So what happens now? Now, Kael said, we build the sanctuary. Together. The construction took 6 months. They chose a valley 5 miles north of the fortress, sheltered, fertile, with a river running through it. Wolves from across the territories came to help, some because they believed in the vision, others because they'd been rejected by their own packs and wanted a new start. Mara worked alongside them, her guardian strength allowing her to haul timber and stone that would have taken 3 normal wolves to move. The children helped too, carrying supplies and keeping spirits high. Finn, the young former rogue, became one of Mara's closest assistants. He worked tirelessly, as if trying to atone for his past through sheer effort. You don't have to punish yourself forever, Mara told him one day, as they raised the frame for the Great Hall. I know, Finn said, but I want to build something good, something that matters. Then you're in the right place, Mara said with a smile. By midsummer, the sanctuary was taking shape. Cabins lined the valley floor. A great hall stood at the center, built from stone and timber. Fields had been cleared and planted. A school was under construction. And at the entrance, a massive wooden gate bore a carved inscription that Mara had spent hours perfecting. No one is worthless. No one is forgotten. The dedication ceremony drew wolves from across the territories. Even some of the alphas who'd initially opposed the sanctuary came to see what had been built. Elder Marcus arrived, looking frailer than before, but with his eyes still bright. Cassian came as well, representing the High Council. You've done something remarkable, she told Mara as they stood overlooking the valley. Mara looked out at the gathered crowd, hundreds of wolves representing dozens of packs standing together. I just gave them a place to belong. That's more than most would do, Cassian said. She paused, then added, There's talk, in the council chambers, about establishing more sanctuaries, about reforming the alpha laws, about guardians serving as mediators between packs. Mara's eyes widened. Reforming alpha law? That would never... It's already happening, Cassian said. You started something, Mara. A shift. It's small now, but it's growing. In a generation, the world our children inherit might be very different from the one we knew. Mara felt tears prick her eyes. I hope so. Kale stepped up to the podium to address the crowd. We gather here today to dedicate this sanctuary, he said, his voice carrying across the valley. A place built on the principle that every wolf deserves safety, dignity, and a chance to thrive. This sanctuary exists because one wolf refused to accept that children were disposable, because Mara Whitlock chose compassion over convenience, courage over comfort. He looked at Mara, love evident in his eyes. She's shown us that true strength isn't about dominating others, it's about protecting them. And today, we honor that truth by opening these gates to anyone who needs refuge. The crowd erupted in cheers. Mara stepped forward, her hands shaking slightly. I'm not good at speeches, she said, and there was warm laughter. But I want to say this. Every wolf here has been told they're not enough at some point. Not strong enough. Not useful enough. Not worthy enough. Those are lies. Every single one of you has value. Every single one of you deserves a place in this world. She paused, her voice growing stronger. This sanctuary is proof that we can build something better, that we don't have to accept a system that throws people away. And I promise you, as long as I'm standing, these gates will remain open. No one will be turned away who truly needs help. The applause was deafening. Sophie ran up and hugged Mara around the waist. The other children followed, surrounding her in a mass of small bodies and bright smiles. Kale watched with a full heart, knowing that this moment, this right here, was what they'd fought for. Not victory in battle, not political recognition. But this, children laughing freely, wolves finding hope, a community built on love instead of fear. One. That night, as the celebration wound down, Kael found Mara sitting on a hill overlooking the sanctuary. Quite a view, he said, settling beside her. Mara leaned against him. I keep thinking about the night I left Ryland's territory. I thought my life was over, that I'd lost everything. And now? Now I have more than I ever dreamed possible, Mara said. She looked at him. I have you, the children, this sanctuary, a purpose. Kael took her hand. There's one more thing you should have. He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it. Inside was a ring, simple silver, engraved with the crest of the northern pack intertwined with the symbol of the guardian wolves. We're already mated, Kael said. But I want to make it official, in the human way, in every way possible. He met her eyes. Mara Whitlock, will you marry me? Mara's vision blurred with tears. Yes, absolutely yes. Kael slipped the ring onto her finger, and they kissed as the stars came out above them. Below, in the sanctuary, wolves settled into their new homes. Children played in the square. Fires were lit. Songs were sung. And for the first time in 200 years, a guardian wolf stood watch over a community built on hope. The rejected Omega had become a queen. The worthless wolf had proven her worth, and the woman they'd thrown away had built something that would outlast them all. But the wedding took place in the sanctuary 3 months later, under an arch woven from pine branches and autumn flowers. All 19 children stood with Mara as she walked down the aisle. Sophie held her hand, beaming with pride. The others carried flowers, their faces shining with happiness. Kyle waited at the altar, his eyes bright with love and barely contained emotion. They exchanged vows in front of hundreds of witnesses, wolves from every pack, humans from nearby villages, even a few skeptical council members who'd come to see this union for themselves. I, Kyle Draven, take you, Mara Whitlock, as my mate, my partner, my queen, Kyle said, his voice strong and clear. I promise to stand beside you, to protect what we've built, and to love you through every storm that comes." Mara's hands trembled as she spoke her vows. "I, Mara Whitlock, take you, Kale Draven, as my mate, my partner, my king. I promise to be brave when you need strength, gentle when you need peace, and to love you with everything I am." When Kyle kissed his bride, the crowd erupted in cheers that echoed off the mountains. The celebration lasted 3 days. There was music and dancing, food and laughter. The children ran wild, playing games and telling stories. The adults shared meals and made alliances and spoke hopefully about the future. For those 3 days, it felt like the world had changed, like peace was possible, like love could actually conquer hate. And maybe, Mara thought, as she danced with her husband under the stars, it could. Ietit. Spring came early the following year. Mara stood in the sanctuary's central square, watching as new arrivals settled into their cabins. The sanctuary had grown beyond her wildest expectations. What had started as a refuge for 19 children now housed over 200 wolves, a young couple with a baby, an elderly male who'd been exiled for defending a guardian's memory, 3 siblings who'd lost their parents in a pack war, a she-wolf who'd fled in arranged mating, a scholar who'd been cast out for questioning alpha law, all of them finding home. Sophie ran up, taller now, almost 12, her green eyes still bright but wiser than they'd been a year ago. "Mama, the new teacher is here. She wants to start lessons tomorrow." Mara smiled. "That's wonderful. Are you excited?" "Very," Sophie said. Then she paused. "Mama, do you think there will be more guardians, like you?" Mara knelt down to her level. "I don't know, sweetheart, but I hope so." "The world needs protectors." "You're the best protector," Sophie said fiercely. Mara hugged her tight. "I had a good reason to be strong. I had you and your brothers and sisters to protect." Sophie grinned and ran off to join the other children who were helping plant the spring gardens. Kyle appeared at Mara's side, his hand settling on her shoulder. "She's right, you know," he said. "You are the best protector." Mara turned to look at the sanctuary, at the life they'd built together, at the wolves who'd found safety here, at the children who were growing up knowing they were valued and loved. "We did this together," she said. "We did," Kale agreed, "but it started with you, with your choice to save 19 children even when it meant losing everything." Mara thought back to that night, the cold, the fear, the desperate flight into the wilderness, the weight of 19 lives depending on her. The moment she'd collapsed in the snow, certain she was going to die. She'd thought she was running toward death. Instead, she'd been running toward life. "Do you ever regret it?" Kale asked softly. "The rejection, the pain, everything that led you here." Mara considered the question. All the suffering, the humiliation, the years of believing she was worthless, the nights she'd cried herself to sleep, the moment Rylan had stood before the pack and stripped her of everything she thought she was. "No," she said finally, "because it made me who I am, and it brought me here, to you, to them, to this." Kale pulled her close. "I love you, Mara Draven." Mara smiled at the sound of her new name, a name she'd earned, not been given. "I love you too." They stood together, watching the sun set over the sanctuary as wolves gathered for the evening meal and children's laughter echoed through the valley. From the mountains beyond, a howl rose, long and haunting and beautiful. Then another, and another. Wolves from across the territories singing the old songs, songs of hope and renewal, songs that hadn't been heard in over 200 years, guardian songs. Mara's breath caught. She looked at Kyle, whose eyes were wide with wonder. "There are more," she whispered. "Other guardians. Waking up. Because of you," Kale said. "Because you showed them it was possible." Mara felt tears streaming down her face as the songs grew louder, more voices joining the chorus. The guardians were returning, and this time they wouldn't be alone. This time they had a sanctuary, a place to gather, a queen who would stand with them. Mara Draven stood in the center of the sanctuary she'd built, surrounded by the children she'd saved and the mate who'd chosen her, and she raised her voice to join the song. Her howl was pure and strong and filled with hope. And across the territories, other guardians answered. The age of the alphas was not ending, but it was changing, evolving. becoming something better. And at the heart of that change stood a woman who'd once been told she was worthless. A woman who'd dragged 19 children through hell and back. A woman who'd become a queen. Not through conquest, but through compassion. Not through domination, but through protection. The rejected Omega who'd been thrown away had changed the world. And her story, their story, would be told for generations to come. A reminder that true strength comes from love. That courage means protecting the weak. That no one, absolutely no one, is ever worthless. This was her legacy. This was her victory. And it was only the beginning.